Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Facebook Live with Bishop Paul and Sheridan Boise.
Good evening. Good to be back again. Gosh, what a day. Absolutely fantastic. We'll talk about that in just a second.
We will. And our guest this evening is David Pott.
Good evening, everyone.
Now, David is the man behind the pilgrimage routes, the Northern Saints Trails. Just a reminder, we're on the way of learning this week. Today was our second day of walking. Tomorrow, our third and final day. We'll tell you a little bit about at the end. But David's the man who has really done all the hard graft in creating these. So, David, how long has it taken to create these Northern Saints Trails?
Well, it's been about 4 years' work, really. We came to live in Bishop Auckland in 2016, and it wasn't long after we arrived that I was intrigued to find that Durham had no long-distance pilgrimage routes to it, unlike all the other major pilgrimage centres in Britain. And so, I thought, well, surely Durham was a very important pilgrimage centre, certainly the most important until Thomas à Becket was martyred in Canterbury Cathedral. And it was actually through connecting with yourself and you discovering that I had been involved in pilgrimage before and had set up a route called the Two Saints Way between Chester and Lichfield, that led to you linking me with this Northern Saints group. And so it wasn't long before they, which was sort of connected with both Visit County Durham, the tourism, and the cathedral, kind of commissioned me to start doing research into the whole thing.
Brilliant.
Yep.
So if you're watching for the first time, very warm welcome. If you're returning, thank you very much. That's great. If you're watching later, thank you for doing that as well. Do share this with others, and of course you can watch the previous 2 days as well, and watch those and share those. Towards the end, we will take questions if there are any that come through. If we don't get time to do them, we'll try and answer them in another way. Sheridan, the way of learning today, we've walked from St. Peter's Monk Wearmouth, which was where Bede first entered as a 7-year-old, all the way through to St. Andrew's Chiltern Moor, which is the church that we're in. We're allowed to be inside tonight on May the 17th, and it's warmer. And it's
been
dry.
raining for the last few hours, so yeah. My jeans are still soaking, so I'm sitting here shivering still a little bit. But
what's been your highlight today?
Oh, look, it's been a really rich day. Now, as you let out last night, the first half of the day, I actually wasn't on the pilgrimage because we're also, during this time we have...
You do yourself down. It was only the first 2.5 hours.
It was okay. All right, the first couple of hours that we also have the real privilege of having the Songs of Praise production team along with us who are filming this, and it'll probably go out as a Songs of Praise episode, probably June 13th, something around that time. So it was my turn to have my interview done down at Finkel Priory, so I was kind of pulled out for that, kind of joined in around about just before lunchtime. A whole bunch of highlights today. We had a real rich variety of walkers today. So there was a very large group that we were allowed to have because of things changing today here in the UK. And we had some asylum seekers from Iran, and so to speak to a couple of guys who had come by different means to get here to this country fleeing persecution because they're Christians. One of them came by boat, and just to hear how that was all done and why they did it. And the family connections, the deep family connections that are broken as a result of them coming here. They're a deeply relational people. And so versus us kind of individual Westerners, there was a huge emotional cost for them to come. That was a real highlight for me, actually, to walk with them. There were some wonderful people along from Civic Life that were along with us today. And also, we went to this monument on this hill. It almost looks like a little mini Acropolis, and it's the Pensure Monument. And look, also, can I just throw in a little thing about this guy over here? So David Pott, 75? 74, 70?
75.
75, okay. So he can still walk 40 to 50 miles in a day. He can walk about that in miles per hour as well. I mean, he's just kind of keeping the pace for us all. And he's an ideas man. You're sending me emails every week or something about something brand new that you're thinking about. So you're the one who has inspired me quite a lot today, because you know the background behind Pension Monument. You could probably fill the folks in a little bit better on that. And then also my highlight was your new favourite Northern Saint.
Yes.
Mr. Gilpin, which we'll get to in just a second too. So look, it's been a rich day, and I'm hoping that our broadcasts are kind of just whetting your appetite to do the same kind of thing, to come and experience the Northern Saints trails, because they really are fantastic, and all thanks to our friend over here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, David, we might come back to the questions, but what was your own personal highlight of the day?
I think one of the things that I particularly enjoyed was the sort of the sparkle of a couple of the people who were with us today. One was Chris Houghton, who's a chaplain at Sunderland University, and he's such an enthusiast. And obviously I like history, and I've gathered quite a lot, but it was lovely to have him because he also knew about various things which I didn't know about, and so it was very refreshing to hear him, and so good that he brought the I like to say sanctuary seekers instead of asylum seekers along. And then Sam Slatcher, the singer-songwriter, and he is such an enthusiast as well. And you know, that's part of the joy of pilgrimages, different characters, but sometimes you get people like them who've got a certain sparkle and make a real difference to the day.
We even had dogs today too, didn't we?
We've had dogs.
Dog for a while.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And obviously, yes, both the people connected with the Pension Monument and Bernard Gilpin.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're always highlights for me.
Yeah. So mine would be, we had a third person who has been seeking asylum or seeking sanctuary, who had the excitement only a couple of weeks ago of being given refugee status in this country. Shams, he's from Niger, and he had to flee Niger for political reasons, and that's obviously clearly been recognised by the UK government because they've given him permanent leave to remain. But also during the day, he sat in Pension Monument for a job interview with City of Sanctuary, and then as we came out of St Michael, Houghton in the Spring, which is where Bernard Gilpin was vicar, he said to me, he was on the phone. He said, "Bishop, they're ringing me to tell me I've got the job."
So good.
So it was and he's another very bright spark, like Chris. You know, very lively, very switched on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So an amazing day, hasn't it? And it kind of fits in with our theme tonight. So each one of these Facebook Lives, we've been having a theme. So our first night, we had the theme of Called to Learn, based on the Saint Bede, who is very much all of this pilgrimage is really kind of in his name. Last night we were talking about Called to Create, and kind of the whole role of arts and creativity in the life of the church and the kingdom and the monastery, and then in our lives as well. And tonight we're talking about being called to act justly. And I don't know if we planned it this way, but certainly it was wonderful that today we happened to have our Seekers of Sanctuary join us, and we had some wonderful even lines of prayers and poetry and some of the things that were arranged for us to
we on these pilgrimage routes we have some prayers at the beginning of the day. We also do prayers after lunch, and the prayer that we use after lunch includes this: "The rough places shall be smoothed and obstacles shall be cleared. I journey in your power. The proud shall be brought low and the humble shall be raised up. I journey in your justice. The hungry shall be fed and the poor shall have good news." And then we use the verse that comes from Micah, chapter 6, verse 8. "What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God."
This is a personal passion of yours.
It is, and
act
indeed
justly.
David's.
And both of you, So here's the question for my mind. How would you define biblical justice? What is it?
in a short period. So it is doing things God's way. We talk a lot about, Jesus taught about the kingdom of God. And there are those who struggle with the phrase kingdom because of its kind of, it appears to be very masculine, it appears to be very tied to a particular thing. So a good friend of mine prefers to say that Jesus talked about the rule of God in every aspect of life, living God's way, living according to it. So what we're looking for in biblical justice is what looks most like the character of the God who is loving and holy and pure and true in every aspect of life.
I like it.
That's
Tweet that one
brief.
out, guys. Tweet
Yeah.
that one out.
So, but I'm going to pick up with you, David, because Sheridan highlighted discovering about Bernard Gilpin,
Yes.
who is not as far back as Bede and so on. He's a 16th century man. Why have you fallen in love with Bernard Gilpin, if I may put it that way?
I think as I discovered about Bernard Gilpin, he reminded me very much of those early Northern saints like Aidan and Cuthbert, and he seemed to be able to be involved in a variety of things as those saints were. And so he undertook...
Because he was a minister primarily, right? He was a minister of a local church.
Yes, so he was
And
a
yet-
minister of the local church there in Houghton, Le Spring, and he committed himself to that place. And he was very widely respected. And Lord Cecil, Queen Elizabeth's, what was he called? He wasn't Prime Minister, but the right. What was the title? I can't remember.
He was effectively the first minister.
Yeah, the
wasn't
First
he?
Minister.
Yeah.
And the Queen, indeed, they were kept on sort of offering him bishoprics and so on, but he knew that he was committed to this place. But he also arranged with his parishioners to say that I need to go on mission. And so he went hiving off to the wilds of Northumbria, interesting enough, the same places where Aidan and Cuthbert and so on used to go. And it was so well known in the 16th century as a totally wild and sort of vagabondish place. And so he did that. Like Aidan, he gave a horse away. He was incredibly generous. I mean, the way that in his household he fed hordes of people. And he had a passion about education as well. And if he, met a poor lad and he thought, this boy's got potential, he just took him under his wing. Very often there were lads who were at his school who were living in his house. His house was always crowded with lots of people, but he looked after these boys. And then once they passed through the school, they inevitably went to Oxford University, which was the university.
That he did a pretty good job.
Yeah, and he would visit them, I think just once a year, but he also wrote to them continuously to check up that they were behaving themselves, making good progress. And so many beautiful things about him. And I love the story particularly of when Lord Cecil came, and he was just amazed because he came unannounced, so here's the most important person other than the Queen just landing on your doorstep with his retinue. We're not told how many people were in his retinue. And Bernard Gilpin isn't fazed, he just says, welcome, along with the other people in his house who were the poor people, and he'd never seen a community like this. Yeah. When we think about justice, in a way, this is like a microcosm of justice, because it's like a vision of the kingdom of God, where there's sort of just an amazing atmosphere and understanding and people respecting one another, who would normally be this huge gap and division. And I love this statement here about the whole situation. It says, there was a large resident household, and it was continually crowded with all kinds of persons, gentlemen, farmers, poor people, who had come for various reasons, yet there was no confusion, no hurry, no ill temper. The utmost simplicity and courtesy of manners prevailed, and all were cheerful. And when he eventually had to leave, Lord Burleigh, he said, when he said goodbye to Gilpin, he told me that he had heard much in his commendation, but had now seen what far exceeded all that he had heard. And reminds me so much of the Queen of Sheba saying, well, I never expected this, but I think it was better than going to Solomon. For Solomon, I don't think he would have had all the poor and everything in his house.
Right.
So I think it's a lovely image, of justice.
He's inspiring people, aren't they? He's just
Yeah.
inspiring people, inspiring stories.
Yeah.
And Bernard Gilpin still inspires the people of Houghton the Spring, particularly. I mean, that was quite clear.
Yes.
Being at St Michael's Church is actually how that still inspires them today.
And if you go there, it's a beautiful church. It's a really powerfully beautiful church, and it seems like a church that is fully alive in God and continuing to do wonderful ministry today. And the feast that happens in Houghton the Spring as well.
The first weekend in October every year, they have this big feasting where they still roast a complete ox in memory of Bernard Gilpin and invite everybody to come.
Cooking for other people, cooking for the poor and providing for them.
And the church is the very heart of that festival. And I think one of the reasons I love the feast in Houghton is, for me, because it is an image for me. The church is so much at the heart of the community and seeking to say, all are welcome and we care for justice for all people. Because that's where we should be as the church, at the heart of working for justice. Sheridan, I'm going to, you said it's our thing, but what, in the conversations you had with the two young men seeking asylum, what went through your heart and mind about how we as a nation should be responding and treating those people?
I'm going to be really honest and say, at first, I was a bit apprehensive about the conversation that might follow, because I was a little bit wondering, what's this going to require of me? If I actually continue to dialogue with these guys, what change is it going to require of me? What stand is it going to ask me to take? So I want to acknowledge that, actually, because I think sometimes that there can be a certain reticence and a little bit kind of almost a fear as to, gosh, if we actually open up the door and start talking about, these people, wanting to come to our country, and that there might be something required of, well, actually, there probably will be. And so it was just really, really good to just kind of keep on talking with these guys and ask them about their story and find out the human aspects of it. The fact is that people that are seeking sanctuary, I love that word, are doing so for a reason, and they're paying a very heavy cost for doing that. It's not just a financial cost. Sometimes, it's all family members getting together and selling things and everything to be able to support sending one of their members away. But again, as we were saying at the beginning, it's these tight relational family bonds that in those cultures are so much stronger than ours, and you don't break them unless there's a very, very good reason. And I think that's what was going through my mind at the time.
Okay.
And also, so now practically what does happen now? And I was really moved by other members of our group today who are working in this field full time. And so their whole area is working on justice for people who are seeking sanctuary, seeking asylum, to find a new life, to find freedom. We've been talking about callings on this Facebook. I think that for some of us, we are particularly called to that. All of us are called to learn. All of us are called to be creative in our own particular way. All of us are called to act justly. Some of us are called to focus very specifically, like Bede was, in learning and scholarship. Some of us are called to focus very specifically in creativity and art. And some of us are called specifically to actually really have a focus of our life efforts to helping people receive justice. And so it was not the scary conversation I was worried about. It was an enlivening conversation that then gets me thinking, okay, how can I help? What can I do from this point on? And seeing the broader church in action. There are already people that I can learn from.
Yeah. So one of the bits of conversation that I had with one of them just highlighted for me again how far we have to sort ourselves out as a nation in how we treat people who arrive seeking sanctuary with us. So one of them has been in the country for 15 months now, and I asked, how often have you heard from the Home Office in 15 months? The answer was once, and that was within the first month. They've heard nothing at all from the authorities about anything to do with themselves. They haven't been offered the opportunity to present their case and so on. 15 months after arriving. We've got serious problems as a nation in terms of how we welcome and how we respond, because that regardless of whether or not eventually that young man is given asylum, he deserves to be treated as a human being with dignity while he's here. And he deserves to be treated in a way that enables him to flourish as much as possible. Because if we did decide that he had to go back, we should want him to go back a better equipped person to serve his nation.
Yeah.
Right.
If we decide that he should be given leave to remain, which I hope he is, we should have been working with him as fully as possible so that he can then enter and be integrated into society more fully. So I'll get on my high horse
Preach it,
here.
preach it, brother. I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
But I want to move to a different theme of justice, which plays into your wife's work. I don't know whether you got a chance to talk, either of you, to one of our other people who joined us actually from Pension Monument, and that's actually a lady called Caroline, who is one of our most impressive clergy in the diocese.
Yes.
She is chaplain to hospice in Sunderland. And so I was chatting to her a bit about what it's been like through lockdown and all the difficulties of families not being able to visit and how they've handled that. Did you get a chance to talk to her?
I didn't, no.
I did speak to her briefly, but not a great deal about her work. Yeah.
But one of the things, of course, that has happened over the last period of time is questions have been raised about whether everybody is treated justly in terms of healthcare and social care, and the pandemic has done that. Are you allowed to say a little bit about your wife's involvement in the healthcare of this nation?
I certainly can, because it's public knowledge, but maybe not knowledge to you. But my wife Merrin is the lead statistician on the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine program, and so I can tell you from first-hand experience that when people say, hang on, normally doesn't it take 10 years to create a vaccine? You're absolutely right. And then when they say it's only taken 10 months to create a vaccine, well, you know why? Is that there's been a very large dedicated group of people have been working day and night, 6 to 7 days a week for the last 9 to 10 months to get us there. And people that have made incredible sacrifices that you'll never know about, but they really have to do it. I'm immensely proud of Merrin. She wrote the defining Lancet paper. The Lancet is one of the leading medical journals in the world, and she wrote the defining paper on the results of all the trials. And so really it's her work that helped us to discover that actually, yes, it works. And so it can be very difficult sometimes to hear some of the conspiracy theories that go around, and the false accusations that can sometimes go around, because you can see the dedication, you can see what works and what doesn't work, and then when certain things are blown up and everything. So, but I tell you, we're talking about callings on these Facebook Lives. That's her calling, and we see that, when we came here to the UK in 2011, we never foresaw that, and yet we can now look back and say, wow, for such a time as this, she's been brought here.
Yeah. What's your experience of the health care in this country, David?
I wouldn't say that I've had a lot of experience.
Now, you're a very fit, healthy 75-year-old, aren't you?
What limited experience I've had has been excellent, I have some hearing issues, but they've sought to be as helpful as possible over that. So let's take this opportunity to actually big up the fact that we live in a country that has a national health service which still is free at the point of delivery. Yes.
It is extraordinary.
It is extraordinary.
What we are offered as a nation.
Yeah.
We tend to moan about it and groan about it rather than recognise It's pretty. It's virtually.
It's astounding.
It is unique, actually, in the world, isn't it, in terms of what it delivers and so on.
Yes.
Australia has a very good system
very-
too, but you know the NHS you're completely free from the point of.
I was very thankful last week because I was due to have my second jab on Saturday, and I got a phone call on Wednesday morning saying, "Can you come? Because we remember that you were saying it was a bit difficult for you to come on Saturday because the next day, you know, if you had any bad reaction, you're starting the Way of Learning pilgrimage." And so, you know, that somebody had really listened and got me in at last minute notice to get my jab on.
I had exactly the same experience around my second jab as well, from my local GP. So it's fabulous. And that's going to throw me back to Bede, you see now. You wonder where I was going next.
Yes,
didn't you?
I was wondering.
Because when Bede went to Jarrow to help found the second monastery from Monk Wearmouth, he went with Colfrith and a whole bunch of others. And the history book tells us there was a plague. And it looks like Colfrith and Bede were the only people to survive. Do you think there's anything that comes through in your reading of Bede, or indeed of Cuthbert or Aidan, around the importance of kind of health in all its fullness?
Well, I can speak from somebody who's come in and then has come in with fresh eyes to the monastery, maybe more so because both of you have had such a depth of history with it. Fresh eyes coming in and going, again, as we've talked about on some of these other live streams, the monastery back then was not just a place of preaching and prayer. It was that, and that was the heart of it, but it was also, it also had an infirmary where it took in those who were ill. It was a place where it took in the mentally ill. Right back then in the early 7th and 8th centuries, it was a place where the poor came. It was this all-rounded place that served the community. It was then the place of dispensing medicines at the time, which were largely based on herbs and things. So it was a chemist. So it just again says to me symbolically about the importance of all of these things within the reign of God. Justice, doing things God's way, and us as followers of Jesus of doing those things and recognizing the importance and the value of each of those things. That's what it says to me. I don't know how it goes for you, David.
Yes, I mean, the only thing that was coming to my mind was just the sort of the compassion, constant compassion of the Northern Saints, their love for others. And I think that compassion and genuine love makes you fearless. And so you engage, as they did with the roughest people, and they weren't afraid to avoid those who were ill. And perfect love casts out fear, and sometimes I thought that the opposite seems to be happening over COVID. You often see it's like perfect fear is casting out love. People are making people suspicious, and we need to follow that example of in this situation of living in love and fearlessly in the context of COVID-19.
Well, thank you both for exploring different aspects of acting justly. A reminder that the Micah 6:8 is, "What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." Tomorrow is our final day of the Way of Learning, and tomorrow evening will be our final Facebook Live, and it's at 6:30, not 7 tomorrow evening, and it will be coming from Durham Cathedral, not inside Durham Cathedral, but you will be able to see the outside of Durham Cathedral. That's
going to be pretty.
Yeah,
still
so
going to be pretty.
Still be very, very pretty. And we'll be reflecting on the pilgrimage as a whole. And we'll be joined by Charlie Allen, who is a member of the team at Durham Cathedral and has been the person at the cathedral end who's done all the planning and working with us on the pilgrimage, essentially. And she will be welcoming us and so on. So if you're able, join us again tomorrow evening, and when we'll be thinking about it as a whole. But thank you now, and please go to rest thinking about how God might be calling you to act justly, love mercy, and how you can walk humbly with our God.
Amen.